Welcome to the Scaling Creative Podcast. We are starting a little series here all about leadership. So we're going to start it today, and I'm really excited about the next couple conversations because leadership is one of those things that, you can go onto Amazon or walk into Barnes and Noble, and there are so many books about leadership. And I think we all want to know how to be better leaders. And sometimes, and especially nowadays, it's shifting a little bit potentially, or sometimes maybe we even need to get back to the core of what leadership is. So I'm excited about today's conversation.
Leadership is hard. There's no question about it.
It is.
It doesn't matter if you are leading a single child or you're leading an organization of hundreds of people. It never gets easier. It just changes.
Yeah.
And it's so important though. I mean, we're going through some really interesting times obviously right now, and I think this is it's more and more proof of just how important it is. So we wanted to do a series all about leadership.
Yep.
So basically this episode today, and we're doing an episode next week as well, just talking all about that, leading through a bunch of different cultures and some different industries maybe.
Yeah.
But the culture and the conversation and things that we had around this topic are just so good. So if you're a person that doesn't necessarily always listen to an entire podcast, I cannot recommend enough. You need to listen to this entire one.
Yeah.
Not because of anything that we're going to say. Nothing great's coming out of our mouths in this episode. But Joe Sanfelippo is our guest today. He is a superintendent in Wisconsin, and he has been superintendent of the year. He's also an author. He's a speaker. He is the amount of truth bombs and things that come out of this conversation.
There are several times where he left us all sitting here like, what?
Yes,
What just
it was
happened?
So good.
Yeah.
So we wanted to bring you this conversation we had with him. He took some time out of his day to just share some thoughts that he had, and there were just some really good things, regardless whether you're in education or you run a multi-million-dollar business.
Right.
Some of the leadership things you will learn on this episode, I promise, will leave you as a better leader. So.
Yeah, for sure. And even if you are thinking to yourself, well, I'm not really a leader, I really would encourage you to, number one, change the thought because you are a leader. But really just listen to this because you're going to hear how not only you can use this in your job, but in your role as a parent or as an aunt or an uncle. Or really, I think everybody is a leader or can be and should be.
Yep.
So this episode is for everyone.
Yep, it is. So here's our conversation with Joe Sanfelippo. Thanks for listening, and we hope this is as awesome for you as it was for us. Enjoy. So Joe Sanfelippo, welcome to the Scaling Creative Podcast. We appreciate you taking some time today. How's it going out there in Wisconsin?
Well, I've had better weeks. I'm just going to be honest about that. We've decided to move to a virtual learning environment for our kids. So with our elementary kids, so that's been kind of tough. But other than that, we had a great week. Our girls played in the state semifinal volleyball this week, which is the second time in a row that they've made that. It's back-to-back years. So that's a really cool opportunity. We had a big win for a football team on Friday, so people were really excited about that. So, I can't complain about anything, to be really honest.
That's awesome. Well, for those who don't know what you do and who you are, can you give a little context as to what you do, what's your profession, and how'd you kind of get to where you're at today?
So my name is Joe Sanfelippo. I'm the superintendent in the Fall Creek School District, home of the Fall Creek Crickets, people. Home of the Fall Creek Crickets. And we are, I'm in Northwest Wisconsin. This is my, my ninth superintendent year. 10th superintendent year. And prior to that, I was a principal, and I was a counselor and a fifth grade teacher and a second grade teacher. I've taught, I coached at the high school level, and just that's really kind of where we're at right now, to be honest.
And then you're also a speaker. You're also like an author. You're a little bit of everything. Tell us about that side of your life too.
I forgot, yeah. I do that kind of stuff too on the side. So, so I love to go and talk to people and just like think about things just a little bit differently. And I think it's funny because, we shouldn't be able to talk about the stuff that we do as much as we do, but because we're a school district of 845 kids in Northwest Wisconsin. We're one building where there's 1,300 people in this village. There's 825 kids in this school. There's no reason that we should be out talking. No reason I should be here with you today. And the only reason is that we talk about what we do. And I think if more people did that, I think they'd find themselves in a much better place. So we've tried to put that into some of the speaking things that we do. We've been trying to put that into, some books that I co-authored. So all of those things said, I think it's really about just making sure that we get the right stories out to the right people when it comes to telling the stories of what's happening in school. So everybody gets an accurate depiction of what really happens in that space, not what happened to them 25 years ago, right? Like people are still jacked up that 25 years ago, like, they didn't get a second chicken sandwich at lunch, right? And they keep talking about it like it was yesterday. And that's not fair to my people because they're just killing it.
Yeah, I've always appreciated, I obviously have gotten a chance to know you over the last couple of years, and I know that you talk about that a lot about, I don't know the exact way you say it better than I do, but about how if you don't tell your story, other people basically will tell it for you. And you're very passionate about that, and you do a lot of, your 1 minute walk to works and all your different content pieces that I just think show so much leadership from the side of just what you believe in, which I always appreciated since I've known you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's really like here, the thing about it's really interesting about, telling the story of schools. And I think when we first started it, we were just saying that you tell your story or nobody else will, or somebody else will, or tell your story, or, you need to impact the narrative. And if you don't say something, somebody else is going to say something about it. And I think I've kind of changed my stance on that a little bit. And it's not just about telling the stories. It's about making sure that those stories are in the right place for people to be influenced by those stories. Because if I'm out on my football field that I can see from here right now in the middle of the day on this Monday, and I'm screaming at the top of my lungs how great my kids are, nobody's going to hear me, and it really doesn't matter, and I'm going to get a sore throat. So how can we figure out ways that we can tell that story in a way that gets some leverage to the work that's actually happening with those people so they feel the momentum building? And so I think that's, I was a huge proponent of just saying, like, tell your story, tell your story, tell your story. But at the same time, telling your story to an open field where nobody isn't helping anybody. It's just, so how are we figuring out ways to leverage the story? And how can you leverage that moment for the people who are in a position to tell great stories and to influence the decisions that are made here when they hear those stories?
That's really good. So this kind of is a good segue into, because today's conversation is all about leadership. And so we wanted to bring a couple people on. And so I do want you to know that Scott talks very highly of you as a leader. But speaking of stories, do you remember the first time that you ever thought to yourself, oh, I'm a leader?
Oh, gosh. Geez. Yeah, it was junior in high school. And so when I was a junior in high school, I was running a little kids basketball camp. I remember it like it was yesterday, now that I think about it. And the basketball coach had a tremendous impact on me because he was like a father figure. He was just was always around, was there, always encouraging. His name is Tom Nisus. He's just recently retired. He still coaches basketball now that I think about it. But anyway, so I was running a skills camp, a basketball skills camp. And we were getting kids excited, and they were going through it. They were doing the thing, and they got really loud, and they were really doing everything, and they were really into it. And I got done and got him off into a different drill. And he came over right after, and he said, "Joe, that was just really phenomenal. You should really think about leading kids, leading school, like being a teacher, that kind of thing." And then I never really thought about it, but, I knew that I had led my team, and I knew that I was, helping in that regard, and did some stuff in high school that would, be a leadership title. But I guess I never really thought about it as a career choice until he said this. And the thing that got me, it wasn't about the kids that he said that you're leading. He's like, you should have seen you in that moment. So that was cool for me because he knew it made me happy to be in that spot, which was really neat of him as a leader to figure out.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So who are some other people in your life that have really been leaders that you look up to and maybe even model yourself after now?
Well, I think my mom, first of all, because my mom has said, my mom is the biggest cheerleader for everybody in her world. And ad nauseum, there are times that she's in a gym watching my son play basketball, and I have to literally turn around and say, you're going to have to leave if you don't take this down a little bit. I'm the superintendent of schools here, man. They're going to kick me out of my own gym. That's a problem. So she's really loud and she's really boisterous and she's really into it, and everybody really likes that about her, except her son sometimes, I think. But the other thing that she always says to me that, she goes, Joey, you're always interviewing for your next job, always. And so I think that was one thing that I always kept in the back of my mind, is that you're always here. You never know what's next, but every interaction that you have has an impact to influence what happens to you in the future. Yes. And so I speak that to everybody that we talk to here, in that all of these interactions matter. Every single one of the interactions that you have in a day matters, because you never know which one is going to be the one that they talk about for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. So what are you doing to make sure that in those moments you are present and engaged in every moment, to make sure that that moment could be the one that influences them positively moving forward? So yeah, I would say Tom, nice as that the basketball coach I was talking about. Same thing. He's one of those guys where, like, if he called right now in the middle of this interview and said, I need you in Spring Valley, Wisconsin right now, I wouldn't even, I'd shut the interview down. I'd start driving. I'd ask why when I got there.
Wow.
So,
yeah, that's powerful.
What came to mind is you were saying how obviously your mom was such a big cheerleader and sometimes so loud and sometimes too much. But I also wonder how has that affected you, as someone that affected people. Okay, so let me try to think of the best way to say this here. You need to be a loud cheerleader for the people that you lead as well. And how do you balance sometimes as a leader? I know that one thing I can struggle with as a leader is wanting to be a big cheerleader, but also having some perfectionism inside my own mind. That how do you lead people through times where it sometimes might feel harder to cheerlead, if that makes any sense?
It makes perfect sense, because right now is actually the perfect scenario for that. Because I just keep, a couple of weeks ago when we were going through some of the stuff with COVID, and we were having, the numbers were kind of, spiking a little bit. And I was just super positive with everybody. I'm like, you know what, we're going to be okay. We've got this. And a couple people reached out to me on a Sunday and said, Joe, I understand it, and you're the most positive person that I've ever met in my life. But there are times where you just need to say to us, this is really bad, and we need to fix it. And so two things kind of came out of that conversation for me. One, I felt so good that people were willing to bring me that information, that they didn't feel scared to say something. But the second thing is, I just need to be, I can be positive, and I'm not going to stop being positive, but I also need to be very real with them and what they're thinking. And so that day, you're talking about perfection, Scott. It's funny because I just got on a video that I made for them, for our staff. And I literally said, when we started, I said, all right, I got no script. There's no social media. There's no board. There's no families. This is just you and me. And I got 2 or 3 notes written on this paper right here. Let's talk. And I just started talking about how I was feeling. And the response to that has been fantastic, in that I think they felt like you can still be positive, because I ended by saying, I'm not going to stop being positive. I'm sorry. I still think you do better than anybody that I've seen in terms of dealing with what you're dealing with, because other school districts are not having the success that you're having because everybody's fighting. So I'm not going to stop being positive. At the same time, I hope this was real enough for you to understand that I do care about you and I'm very concerned, but we can't stop being positive just because we're concerned. So I think that's really, when it comes down to the perfection piece of it, there are things that I do till they're perfect. And those things are, and almost only are, videos for the community, videos that we would put on Facebook that I know they're going to be seen by a ton of people. And then we're going to be judged by it from a school district lens. And emails that I send to the community, or letters that I send to the community, I try to check those as closely as I possibly can. But when it comes to some of the other stuff that I do, just some of the videos and like the 1-minute walk stuff, they don't have to be perfect. They just have to be done. And I feel like that makes them more authentic in the long run.
I was just going to say the word authentic kept coming to my mind as you were talking, that I think authenticity in leadership is so crucial because I can't remember who said it, Craig Groeschel or something. People don't want to follow somebody who's always perfect. They want to follow somebody who's real. And so I think even you just saying, speaking to your teachers, okay, I've got 2 notes here. Let's just talk. Like, let's be real about this. That shows and is a huge part of leadership.
Yeah, what's really interesting about that to me is that, like I tell our staff all the time, that you don't always have to be right with the community if you're always real with the community. And I think all the stuff that I put out there for the community, that I agonize over it from a perfection standpoint, just to make sure that what I'm saying reflects who we are. I mean, there's obviously a lot of ums and ahs and here's what I'm thinking and blah, 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 that kind of stuff. But the message has to be on point. And at the same time, it also has to be authentic. And I think we try to build authenticity with with the volume, to be really honest. I think authenticity for us comes in volume, in that we put a lot of stuff out. So when we screw up, it doesn't end up being like the permanent tattoo that they spelled wrong. It's just something bigger. It's just something that happens and we screwed it up, and we've built this social capital. And when we build the social capital, now we're allowed to make a minor mistake because we've built up the social capital moving forward. When we started the pandemic in March, and we started planning the year in April, but we started talking to the community about how the year was going to start in May. So every week from May until the first week in August, I did a Facebook Live session that people could just come on and ask questions. And they asked the same question. All the questions were the same. And I answered them all the same way every single time. But it gave me 2 things. It gave me credibility in the answer, and it gave them an opportunity to ask the question again to see if I had changed my mind. And some of the things we had changed our mind. So we said, well, prior to today, we were thinking about this. After doing the research, now we think that. So that gave us, I think, and then so when our plan rolled out at the beginning of August, and we kept saying August 3rd, August 3rd, August 3rd, our plan will come out on August 3rd, August 3rd, August 3rd. And so when August 3rd came and the plan came out, the plan wasn't perfect. And we said that out loud. But they knew how we had devised the plan. It wasn't just Joe sitting in his office thinking that this might be a nice idea. It was, this is how the whole process worked out. And I think they gave us a little bit of, they gave us a little credibility when it came to that. They gave us a ton of latitude in that decision as well.
Yeah, I think the honesty thing is so important because especially during this time, there's so much, obviously, uncertainty, even though I'm so tired of hearing that word, but there's so much of it. But at the same time, I think where some leaders are making the mistake is sometimes feeling like they have to have the perfect answer before they give one.
Right.
And it doesn't help the organization because you cannot have the answer right now to everything. It's just not possible.
Right.
So it's foolish to even try. And I feel like we've seen that in certain ways that, the whole thing has panned out over where people are predicting things and then changing and this, that you lose credibility because you tried to make the prediction right before you had it, rather than just being honest about we don't really know. So let's just play this week by week and day by day. Because this whole thing, this is uncharted territory for everybody.
Yep.
And I think people have gotten themselves in trouble with that for sure.
The great leaders that have come out of this whole thing, I mean, you can tell that they've been transparent through the whole thing with the people around them.
Right.
Because imagine what it would have been like if you just never took the question and answers from your community and just popped out with some answers. It would have been so much worse. But transparency has really evolved through this whole pandemic.
So a couple of things. Oh, go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say that, it's the other thing about leadership in this time is that it's super easy to lead when you know the answer. That's not hard. Anybody can do that. But what will end up happening in the next, what has happened and what will happen in the next year is people are going to A, lose their jobs, or B, get extensions or really get a lot of credibility over what has happened over the course of the last 6 months. And the people that lose their jobs, and I could be one of them, you just never know at this point, is that they may have been doing the right thing the whole time. But when nobody knows what you're doing and how you're coming up with the conversation, then they're going to make up. I talk about it all the time. The idea that in the absence of knowledge, people tend to make up their own. And if your livelihood is meant by 5, 7, or 9 people that come into your school literally once a month and hear about your school because they're board members and they just are out in the community, then you're in trouble if you don't provide them with the opportunity to know exactly what's happening so they don't have to make up what they think might be happening because they heard it at the bar.
Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of things I'm hearing, like 3 things specifically when it comes to leadership. I hear you talking a lot about consistency in the way that you show up, communication, clearly communicating, and then authenticity. Those are like the 3 main things I keep feeling like I'm pulling from you and your leadership. Would you add anything else to that like you feel makes you a great leader?
Well, yeah, I don't know if I'm a great. I have a great group of people that I think thank you, but I just have I think I'm just really really loud, and that's part of it. But I think you're right when it comes to like the consistency piece of it. I think one of the things that we've told our team is we want to be the known entity in an unknown world. So what do we know? So when we're communicating, we communicate the same way. The videos are always about the same length. They're always posted at the same time. They're always in the same spots. It's a reliable source. You might not like the answer, but it's a reliable source in terms of what we're doing. So we try to make sure that that's the case when it comes to consistency, and we're authentic and transparent along the way. But I think the other thing is that I think you do have to be optimistic, obnoxiously positive on some level, just to say, I'm seeking out the positive pieces of what's going on here, and I'm going to continue to do that. And if you can do that, then you're going to find yourself in a position where you have people that want to, kind of come along with you, I guess. Yeah, I feel like I tend to lead from the middle, where we allow people, the opportunity to lead when they're ready and push them when they, in the direction that they want to go, so they can get out in front of it. The last thing that I hear leaders talking all the time about how they want to hire great people and get out of the way. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. Like, I hired you. I want to see you do great things, man. Like, let me get behind and push a little bit. Let me help you. What resources do you need? I'm not getting out of the way. Let's do this together. So I think that I just find myself wanting to provide time, resource, and opportunity for our group to make sure that they can grow, and hopefully that works out for them in the future.
Yeah. And that's what great leaders do, right? They champion other people. They coach other people. They mentor. They give guidance. And I was just listening to a podcast this morning, Brene Brown's new podcast. And she had, I think her name is Abby Wambach. I don't know if I'm saying her last name right.
The soccer player.
The soccer player, yeah. But she said she could always tell the success of a team and a leader based on when they score a goal, what do they do? Because she would have her kids watch her playing soccer just so they remembered how great she was. But one of her daughters had said to her, Abby, why do you always, who are you pointing at? Every time you score a goal, you point. And she's like, I'm pointing at the person that passed me the ball, because that is so important to recognize that, and I thought, oh, that is leadership right there. Is not somebody who's like, oh, it's all about me, but it's about you. So really helping and being a part of a team and being a leader is championing other people as well, which I feel like you do.
Yeah, we live by this mentality here that has been really helpful for us, and we call it recognize, acknowledge, extend. So the thing that is important for us as leaders, wherever you lead, the first thing is that you put yourself in the right mindset to walk through hallways of this place and recognize the greatness of your colleagues. So if you're in the right mindset, whatever you have to do to put yourself in the right mindset, for me, it's writing 2 positive notes to start my day, because then I can take those to the people in the building. And I know that when I walk through the building, I'm going to try to find what I'm going to write about the next day. So that's the first thing. So you recognize. The second thing is that you acknowledge to the person that they're doing great things. Because a lot of times I think we walk through hallways and think, oh man, that's a really good lesson going on there. But then we keep going and get to our next place, wherever that is. So you acknowledge to the person that they're great at their work. So now you've recognized and acknowledged. So in that moment, you've made 2 people feel very good. You feel good because you are willing to talk about it. You made the person feel good that's doing the work because you've acknowledged to them that they're doing the work. But when you do the third thing, when you extend the conversation to somebody who wasn't there, it changes how people view each other, because what ends up happening is whoever you extended the conversation to is going to walk across the hallway or down the hallway or across the building to acknowledge the person that's doing great work, because at some point somebody did it for them and it felt good and they want to do it again. And that's how you build this culture of storytellers, this place where everybody's story has value. People talk about building culture, and we got to build culture. We got to build culture. Yeah, I get that. But it's just like telling a story. If you're telling a story in an open field, nobody cares. Building culture means making sure that people's story has value, because if they know that their story or their spot has value, they're willing to talk about it. And then that breeds this whole opportunity for us to really talk about the incredible things that are happening, as opposed to in little pockets across the building. Because if we're just talking about the little pockets of excellence, two things happen. One, people that are doing those are not in those little pockets of excellence, don't feel like their pocket is any good at all. Right. And the second thing is then they feel like, well, the people who are in pockets of excellence are going to get all the resources anyway. So why even try? Right. So we really want to make sure that everybody's story has value. Everybody's A to B is different, but everybody's A to B has value. And forward is forward. Even if it's a step, it's better than you were yesterday. And if you don't value where they start, there's no chance they're even going to think about taking a step, because then you get into that whole conversation about, well, you weren't here 10 years ago when this happened. Well, of course I wasn't. I don't know. I can't help you there, but I can value where you start with me. So let's value there. Even if it's not where I want you to be, let's start here and move.
Yeah. Good. That's like dropping bombs over here, man.
I was like, end the podcast.
So good. But there was something you said in there about, was it two things that you're grateful for? Is that what you said in the?
It's the two notes thing that you said you do. Two positive thoughts.
You have to put yourself in the right position to see the great things. So I tell our group two things. Well, first, so I write two positive notes, take them down to people in the building that are, whatever they're doing, just to kind of let them know I was thinking about them. But the mentality that we've taken on with our group is we tell people that you need to start your day and end your day with joy. Whatever that is, if that's, meditation, if that's yoga, if that's a candy, I don't care what it is. Like whatever it is, start your day with joy and end your day with joy. So when we started the pandemic, I want to see if I have it. Hold on just a second. Oh yeah, I found it. Okay. So when we started the pandemic, I started I would start every day on our Facebook page reading stories to kids, right? Read 3 stories. And then I do this magic trick. And I just make up and I Google bad magic tricks or dad magic tricks or whatever. And they're awful, right? And so I'd be I'd read my books, and then I would get on the line with the kids, and I'd be like, oh, kids, I'm just sitting here drinking my coffee. Just having a good time drinking my coffee. What, do you need me to make this thing float? Is that what you need, kids? You need me to make this cup float? Because I can with my mind. I'm magic. And I'd be like, oh, what in the world? Oh my gosh. Oh my, he's magic. He's totally magic. He's totally magic. That's what he is, right? And then as soon as I got done with the live call, I would have kids Google Hangout with me or Zoom meeting with me or FaceTime me. And they're like, you're not magic. You're not. I saw your thumb in that cup. You're not magic. You're not magic. And then I'd argue with these 7-year-olds. I'm like, yes, I am. I'm totally magic. And they're like, no, you're not. And I'm like, yes, I am. And then they're like, no, you're not. And I say, well, I guess, you know what? I guess you're just going to have to come back tomorrow and find out. And then then 8:00 the next morning, they find out. And it gave parents 20 minutes to just kind of break away. So that's start your day with end and joy. The thing that start with the last part, the end your day with joy, people they miss the point of this. I want people to end their day with joy. Something like, for me, it's sending a positive text before I go into the house, because I want to be there for the people that give me the most latitude and love me the most, right? That's what I want to do. But what people forget is end your day with joy. The word end matters, because in a virtual environment, people don't end their day. They just keep going and going and going. And all of a sudden it's 10:30 and 11 o'clock and they're still going. They've never ended their day. So then they're exhausted the next morning when they wake up. So for me, it's send a positive text or a quote or make a positive call before I get in the house. For when we were here in spring, I would make calls to kids who had birthdays on that day when they weren't here. and just say, happy birthday, I'm thinking about you, I wish you were here. And it did two things. It gave me joy and them joy, hopefully, but it ended my day. So I could walk across the street, because I live across the street from school. I could walk across the street and be there for the people that I love the most. So
Love it.
Oh my goodness, I love it so much. Because one of the questions I was going to ask you was, as far as self-leadership goes, because I think that great leaders first lead themselves well. So I was just going to ask you, like, is there a routine or something you do to lead yourself well? But I think you just told us what that was.
I would love to tell you that, like, it's funny because the things that I want to do, or no, I shouldn't say it like that. The things that I probably should do to lead myself more, I don't. Like, I should write more. I hate writing. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. And so I don't do it. It's like I'll never be a great golfer, because every time I stand over a putt from 10 feet away, I realize I'm going to miss it, and I refuse to practice putting. I would rather go out on the range and just like hit bombs with the driver. Yeah. Like, that's what I'll never get any better, because I'm not practicing. So I don't write, so I don't get any better at it. So that's a failure on my part. But I do try to just make sure that we get the content out so it influences people, that it gives the opportunity. Those 1 minute walk to work videos that I do, that are literally like a 1 minute leadership challenge from my house to school, started because I just had a couple thoughts on the way to school. That was it. And then people liked them. So then we just started doing more of them. And a lot of them, almost all of that, I think there's like 60 of them right now, but almost all of them are things that I've screwed up before. And so I think I'm just here to try to help people in those moments, not have to have 4 months of hardship because you forgot to do something in September that you should have done, but you just, you didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that holds people back, doesn't it? I read a book called Finish by John, I think it's like a Cuff or a Koof. I can't remember exactly how you say his last name, but he pretty much said the thing that holds people back from finishing is perfection. And that you have to have this like beautiful tolerance for imperfection, because then you'll finish more of what you start, which I think is so true. So that's what I'm hearing in what you're saying. Not being afraid to fail, make mistakes, learn from them. That's the whole point. Mm-hmm. You're not going to walk through this life perfectly.
Right. And that's where with us, it was, the beauty and volume is really what comes with the school district stuff. So if the only time that you ever talk to your district is when you need something and you screw it up, like, you're done. But if you continue to talk and just engage them, and social media is a great place for that. But again, people forget that the first word in social media matters. Like, social matters. Like, you have to create relationships with these people online, so when you screw something up, they don't jump on your page and start talking about how awful the place is. Yeah. If you develop relationships, we run contests and our page, and we respond to questions, and it's not just a bulletin board of pictures, it's a real relationship. Yeah. I think that's been very helpful for us.
Yeah, for sure. So many people post and ghost, post and then, comment to people.
I think it's because people struggle with not wanting to always hear the feedback.
Yeah.
People are too concerned about what everyone thinks.
Right.
It's the biggest reason people don't post in the first place.
Right.
They don't want to post something that could be valuable to somebody because they're afraid of the negative things that come from it, which is
100%. Totally agree. Yeah. And that's been really tough for school districts. And I think I don't want to say we've trained our community, because I think they've trained us too. We just have this different relationship with them, where it doesn't turn into, and that's not what you said. That's not what you said, or that's not what you did. Now, there are people in our community that decide that they want to troll our district in other places, but I'm not going there to find them. That's not my job. I'm not going on 10 different websites just to see where people are trolling. We'll take care of ours. We know that this is a safe place for us to do this work.
Okay, so if you could sit down with yourself, Joe, at like the beginning of your journey of leadership, or your career, what would you say to yourself, just to help you avoid like some unnecessary growing pains? What would you say to younger Joe?
It's not about you, man. It's never about you. Guess what? You're going to move on, and they're going to find somebody else. And if you don't figure out a way to make it better for the people once you leave, then you've done nothing. If this place fails the minute that I leave, I have completely failed this school district, completely. And I think at first, when I first started, I wanted people to know that I was going to be good at the job. And I think the part of it was as a principal, I was a 28-year-old principal who only had 3 people on staff that were younger than I was. So I felt like I needed to establish myself as, the leader of all these people that, some that I could have actually had as teachers. And so that was me, just like being a little bit arrogant, honestly, in terms of, no, this is the way that we're going to, because I said so is not a leadership strategy. And I think a lot of times people employ it as such because of the position that they hold. So it doesn't even work with my kids. So I don't understand why I would have worked with a group of people, but I don't know. So that would be the first thing that I would say to younger Joe. The second thing I would say is to take a step back, because there are a lot of times that I feel, and I still feel, that I'm looking to the next thing, not the next position or anything, but like, okay, that was really fun. Let's celebrate it for 30 seconds. But what's next to make sure that I can get in front of it for our people? So just take a step back and realize that the work that these people are doing is exceptional. And you have to be able to actually take some of that in if you're going to find some joy in what that looks like.
So good.
That is good.
I feel like he's hitting a lot on the difference between management and leadership, especially in his first point, because if you say you left and everybody failed the minute you left, that would be more like a management and you do as I say type of mentality. But I think the leadership mentality is training people how to think a certain way and kind of like letting that positiveness trickle down into everyone. So when you do leave, if you were to ever leave, they would still have that mindset kind of ingrained in their brain. That's the difference there that I'm seeing.
I think one of the things that I try to tell leaders when I talk to them is that you need to have both. Like, you need to be able to lead and be out there and try to inspire people to do their best work, but people still want to get paid. And if you don't fill out the forms to make sure that they get paid, you're going to lose credibility as a leader. So there are some management tasks that need to be done within the context of your work. You can still lead and manage, and you don't have to be one or the other, but you do have to be both. And I think that was a little hard for me too. And I think, when we were talking about those positive notes, the other thing that I had to do was figure out a better routine to start my day, because I wasn't willing to see the great things there. So I would get to my office. I'd get into my office. I'd turn my computer on. I'd get my seltzer water. I'd check my email. I'd sign some forms. I'd get into school, and then I would, see kids and get into classrooms. By the time that I got into school and saw classrooms, I was already in the wrong mindset, because the only thing that brought me joy in that first group of things was my seltzer water. So as soon as I turned my computer on, and as soon as I started answering, I don't know if you know this, but there aren't a ton of people that are emailing the superintendent of schools at 6:00 in the morning with great things to say about the school district. So clearly, if that's what you're seeing to start, then you have more stuff on your list before you get to any of the stuff that you want to do. And when you get to the stuff that you want to do, you're already in the wrong mindset to do so. So you just got to change it. So now I don't even check my email till like 10. And you can do that in your district. You can do that if people see you. If they don't see you until 10, they're like, well, what's going on? Right? Like, what's he doing until 10 o'clock? I could have slept in too. And I think the thing that people need to understand about these positions, leadership positions, is when people don't know what you do, they make up what you do. That's the first thing. But the second thing that ends up happening is when they don't know what you do, you become a number, not a leader. And then people start doing this. Well, you know what? For all that money, for all that money that we pay this guy, we could get 2 more teachers in this classroom. We could get 5 more aides in this classroom. We could get Chromebooks for everybody or iPads for everybody. I don't know what they do. You don't become a leader anymore. You become a number, and that number comes with a target.
So good. Well, Joe, we can't end any better than that. We really appreciate your time. Some really, really, really good things.
Yeah.
Looking forward to hopefully hopping on the road again sometime and seeing you soon. Yeah. But best of luck in this, obviously, extremely unique school year for sure, but love what you're doing out there. I love how loud you yell about those crickets. And I still have my shirt. I still wear it every once in a while.
Talk about it. That's right. Well, then it's the only time that you look really great, Scott. I'm just going to tell you right there. There aren't a lot of schools in the country that can tell you that when you walk outside tonight, we've sent our mascot for you. So when you go out there tonight and you hear those crickets, we sent them. Deal with that. And now try to go through the next 2 weeks without making sure that you think about us.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Joe, for being on. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
I appreciate it. Go Crickets.
Let's have a little bit of reflection time here because I felt like that was one like bomb.
One mic drop after
one mic drop after the other. So did you have like one major favorite takeaway?
I really liked the
recognize, acknowledge, extend.
I really liked the extend side of it.
Okay.
Oh, that was
just
cool.
because of that idea of it not like getting it out of that one little conversation that happened.
Yeah.
Because I think that is something that I think it's sometimes you can sometimes do the other two instinctively.
Yes.
But that like making it a point to do that and not just hoping that it will extend because I think it also, I forget exactly what you said, it was just too good, but how someone else then hears that, it paints a totally different picture of the person.
Yeah. Yeah.
That they might have never seen. Especially, I think about the most of like when you don't like necessarily someone in your workplace or whatever. And I wasn't pointing at you.
Thank you.
But you know how like in a larger workspace, especially,
right.
there's naturally people that aren't as good of friends of others, but how different it can change the whole vibe when you hear something about a person that you don't necessarily know about, and it can change everything.
Yes. That was like the culture piece.
Yeah.
That was so natural. Like he's like, you know, everyone talks about culture. But that is really what I think we need to start focusing on, what actually builds, like the activities that actually build the culture. And but I loved that one too. What were you going to say? I cut you off.
It's easy to be pessimistic in that type of situation.
Yeah.
And I think it's easier than being optimistic. It might come more naturally for him, but for me, that's actually really good. Like, I'm actually going to implement that.
I know.
Because to get yourself out of your head and go tell somebody else, you have to think about it.
Yeah.
But then that person's like, oh, well, he just told me something, and they're not even in the room.
Yeah.
And now I know about that person's success. And I think that's a great.
And as soon as you tell someone something, it makes them feel like they kind of have to do it back. And then in turn, it develops this culture of nonstop looking for opportunities because you're almost forced to, like, you feel forced to do it without it being like, it's interesting.
How can you apply this in your life?
Yeah, exactly. It should apply a lot, right?
Yeah, but like, let's think of, I don't know, some examples of how can you even do this in your home or
I think
with
it's
your
just as
children
simple as, like, not saying anything bad behind somebody's back. It's so easy to go home and complain. If you go home and build just on the positives, that's an example of extending your like what you saw in somebody else's success throughout the day. I think it could be simple. I don't think it has to be. I mean, he's got clear examples in his classroom of, you know, things that teachers are doing that he's seeing. But I think it's like every day. I think it can be pretty simple.
Yeah, I think with the family, it's a big piece. I mean, it's really hard, and I think so much of what he went, which is all tied in so well, is like ending your day in joy and going back to your family. You can't do any of this kind of stuff if you're not in a good place when you get to your family in the first place. And that idea was so interesting about like not ever ending your day, because you're kind of we're naturally living in a connected world, and I love it. So I'm not one of those people that's complaining about technology. But it is. It's not fair at all to anyone you have a relationship outside of this place with, like, or your workplace or whatever, because you're giving them barely
the scraps,
the
leftovers.
You're giving them what's left over. And yet that's hard. Like, it's hard to sometimes. There are some people, naturally, you're one of them, Joe's one of them, that is naturally very positive. That is not naturally me. And so you have to intentionally try to change what's not actually natural. But even just making that a part of like having to do it, hopefully would force you to kind of be like looking for the better things rather than I recognize the weaknesses very easily, and that's not a good thing. So
but it's also a skill. Like, I mean, just because you recognize weakness, I mean, it's just a habit that you're in.
Retrain yourself.
Yeah, you can totally retrain yourself to think about, you know, constantly think about the positive things. But one of your strengths, though, is seeing a weakness and going in and lifting it up to a strength. But
but going at it can sometimes be
going at it. Yeah. In the way that you do. But
and
yeah.
to me, the other thing that you said that I definitely agree with is just the authenticity of
Yep.
stuff, because I realize even as someone that puts content out, what I've always said from day one, even like with my YouTube channels, like I never tell you how to do something. I just tell you how I'm doing it. And because of that, you can never be wrong. And that's kind of how I look at like the idea of what, he does it from a school, but a company does it for content or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just putting out lots of messages,
Yes.
like he said, of volume and authenticity, you just builds this credibility of you're not trying to make it seem like you know everything. Where I feel like people, when they only hear one message a year, naturally it has to be perfect.
Yeah.
Because they're like,
True.
There's the rare times I'm hearing someone talk. It's like the person that never talks a conversation. When they randomly talk, you're like, oh, this is different.
Yeah.
Versus you can't, you might mess up and say things wrong all the time if you talk all the time. But that was a thing I think is just super important for companies too, authenticity.
I love how he said the transparency that they have as a school does not allow room for assumptions from the community. Because they're transparent and open. And even if they don't agree with them, at least they're seeing it every day and they're getting updated real time. And they can all be on the same page that way.
I've always heard that him say that all the time. The without knowledge, the absence of knowledge. How the heck did he say that? That's so good.
Let's get him back on.
But no, that's just something he's always preached. I always loved about him, is because people will make up the story. In any industry. I'm getting a car worked on right now, and if they send a huge price quote and I know nothing about it whatsoever, I'm going to make up that it's too expensive. Versus if there's tons of transparency in the email they sent about what needs to be replaced, why it needs to be repaired, all the aspects, it's creating this. Okay, I get it. It can happen in the video industry. Why is that so expensive? Why is it so expensive to do this? Why you can't expect people to know.
Right.
So you have to educate people to even understand the value they're getting from something.
Yes. Yeah. You're the expert.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are not in the thing that you're good at. So you have to, education is such a huge piece. But he was phenomenal. And I think you can utilize so many of the things that he said in every area of your life, or any profession that you're in, or personal life. So
Absolutely.
We would love to keep this conversation going with you guys. So what were some of your biggest takeaways? Whether you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and comment below, or maybe screenshot it, share it on Instagram, post on your stories. Tell us what your biggest takeaway was. We would love to hear.
Yes. And thanks as always for listening, watching Scaling Creative Podcast. Talk to you guys soon.